ready. This is nice. I feel like we're getting to have a weekend dinner date, eat and greet
Yeah.
kind of deal. It's like dating
Yes.
another astrologer, like professional dating, but live.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's like a blind date, but we've talked before.
I know, I know. All right, you guys, welcome to tonight's Eat and Greet. And yes, we did reschedule from Wednesday, so you didn't miss anything. We're here on time. Everything's perfect, and I'm so grateful to have you. So hopefully in the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, we give you something that was worth the time that you're taking to come hang out with us. All right,
Yes.
some housekeeping things. The solstice gifts are still up, but I do know that they are almost gone, so you can take advantage of them. They'll be in the description box down below. As well, I'll be participating in the Astrology Summit about passion and purpose and your power and owning that and being really empowered. That's coming up August 7th through the 9th. So your registration is also in the description box down below. And it is free with capital 4 letters. It is free and in the budget. So I would love to see you absolutely over there. And tonight, while we have a new eat and greet, we're going to sit down and dig in and get into this. There is also a whole beautiful playlist of eat and greets just waiting for you. So if you haven't sat down, had a little snack and dug into those, please feel free to do so. And if you've got suggestions on other astrologers where you're like, you must bring them over, let me know in the comment section down below. All right, man, let's get into this tonight. It's a good
Yes.
feeling night. Bear, you're coming over.
Yeah.
I gotta ask,
hmm
where did you get your name? How did this
So
come to be?
yeah, so my family is Alaskan Native among a bunch of other lineages, but that's like the matrilineal line, and that's how we track lineage. So the name you get when you're born is kind of a placeholder. It's not always true for people, but it's not uncommon to get a name when you get a personality and turn into an adult.
Hmm.
As life circumstances change. So I was on a medicine journey. Yes, medicine journey. Exactly what that sounds like. And I asked Mother Medicine to give me my medicine song. Um, so it was deep spiritual internal work, and the song that I got had these words Toslika, which I'm not saying entirely correctly, but I brought that to my elder, my uncle, by the way, that like Westerners would track family relationship, but from my cultural paradigm, he's my grandfather. So it was the right person to come to, and it's like, hey, I got like these words. I think I remember seeing in a dictionary once that like these mean something, and he kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, bear and dog, but dog bear because the second word is the adjective there. So dog bear is a lot. I don't normally share that with people or share the my language there, but it feels appropriate to let some folks know what's what with that. So it's a translation. It's way easier than being like, "Hi, I'm Dog Bear," or "Let me coach you on how to pronounce this," because I'm
Right.
not an expert in it either. But yeah, that's the very short version of how I got that name, and it feels better, and life has been better with that name. So
Feels better. I love that. Like to sit and have the right name. There is something about that is beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. So just the education has started well before the education of astrology started, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I got the name after I got into astrology, but definitely um, the deeper I get into astrology and the older I get, the more I'm able to look back and go like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. My uncle fed my brother and I bear meat, and we were out in the village, out in the bush of Alaska when we were kids, and I came to find out slightly before getting the name bear that that's totally taboo. We were both way too young. Neither one of us should have had bear meat at all. And so sometimes I joke with my uncle, like, yeah, it's because you fed us that taboo food, and now I got the bear name. My brother also has a bear name, so it's just a, a nice way to connect, especially as a disconnective native. I didn't grow up in the bush. I was fortunate enough to spend a summer there as a kid with my grandmother, but um, that cultural continuity isn't there. So those small ways that I find to connect that are really um, from my people and feel like a good way to honor my ancestors. I'm always really excited to make that as real and alive in my life as possible.
Yeah, beautiful. So how did you come to astrology? That's always the most fascinating story, I think, for us. You know, some of us just came out with like the stars in our hands, and the rest of us like quit our accounting jobs and took up astrology. So, what was your pathway
Yeah.
in?
So I just took up the accounting job to facilitate the astrology in the last year and a half, actually. And that's in my chart for sure. My grandmother, she was born August 6th. I'm born August 9th. So, a Leo grandmother, and I was her first grandkid too. That she had to talk about that. So I think by the time I was 8 or 9, I was like, I'm a Leo. My grandma's a Leo. We're both Leos, lions, king of the jungle. And being a Leo, it's so easy to get to develop that affection for astrology. At least if you get the, king of the jungle part before you get the, you're so arrogant and self-centered.
Sure.
That can be a bit of a turnoff. But I knew about astrology as a really young person. I want to say it was my 9th birthday. My grandmother gave me this little teeny tiny Leo pocket astrology book and just talked about, ruled by the sun in the summer. These are the dates, gold and orange and playful and all these wonderful things about Leo. So I naturally very taken with it and just kept, when my grandmother passed after my 9th birthday, I got some of her books. And one of those books was a tarot book. And so just getting really into tarot as a preteen, young teenager, anything that was symbolic and correspondences and talking about mythology. I was an early reader as a young kid. And I remember reading the Bible. Like I'm not really Christian, even though some of my family members are. That wasn't really my upbringing, wasn't steeped in religion. But I had this children's Bible that I just read to my brother like story time. Which story do you want to read out of this book tonight?
Right.
So by the time I was a teenager, I'm just, thinking about all of these correspondences and connections and getting deeper into mythology and other stories of what people think about the world. And being my age, I'm in my early 30s, used bookstores and the internet were like just a treasure trove. Being at an age where I was able to just head over to the bookstore after school in high school and hang out as long as I wanted to. And I just sit there on the little stools and like read as much of the book as I could before I had to go home. And I guess obsession would be a fair word. And never been able to put it down. And in the last couple of years, I realized, as I was heading into Saturn return and what am I going to do? I'm an adult. I have to make decisions. And I was like, well, the one thing that I do all the time obsessively and never get paid for is astrology. So what if I really put my attention and focus there and see if that can't be the gift that I share with the world that facilitates me being myself.
Oh my gosh, that's the story, right? Like just at some point for all of us, whether it happens early on or we take some steps, it takes a little bit longer. I think we all just arrive at that question of what if I just do this?
Yeah.
What if this is the thing? And that's a beautiful, scary, oh my God kind of moment. But also, like for me, anyways, I was like, all right, man. Well, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what responds to my chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what does it look like for you today? Like, what does your life look like as a practitioner today? Before we jump into the education and all of that, I think sometimes there's this thought that it's like, okay, if I'm going to be an astrologer, I'm going to just quit my day job and that's it, and I'll just do that. And I'm like, okay, right?
Don't quit your day job.
Don't find your spiritual path, but please don't starve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a full-time bookkeeper right now. Thought I would never do that. My mom's an accountant, hounded me for years to get a real job with benefits. And I was like, no, Mom, I'm in the restaurant industry. I have stability and lots of money. And I'm glad I finally listened to my mom. I would be left without a shirt right now if I had just stuck on the bartender thing. Yeah, I have a full-time job. I'm a member of not too many, but I'm a member of quite a few astrological organizations. I started my practice back in April of 2018. I had the fortunate experience of being able to attend NORWAC, the Northwest Astrological Conference, in March of 2018, and met Omari Martin, who's an astrologer out of Chicago. He is a professor of accounting. I know he's a doctoral candidate right now in accounting, and sitting down next to him, I was just like, Black man astrologer, college professor astrologer. Like, it's not just crazy hippies who do this. They're like normal, grounded people in this field. And, I had the opportunity to chat with him over dinner and talked a lot about the need, that, there's being a full-time consulting astrologer, conferences, and a lot of ways to make money as an astrologer, but that the community as a whole needs people who are leading organizations. They need teachers, we need writers, we need folks who are, just preaching the good word. As far as like quitting the day job, I set myself a 5-year business plan, and with my past experience in nonprofits and other volunteer work that had me like grant writing and things like that, I put that program development and project management experience to use and wrote a 5-year business plan. I'm a little ahead in some ways, a little behind in other ways. I think that for folks who are considering starting a career in astrology, education and community, a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is really important. But one thing that I was chatting with a couple of my colleagues about recently is that, if you have a gift and you're approaching astrology as I have this spiritual gift or medicine, however you understand it, and I have a responsibility or a desire to share it, like you said, if you're starving and you're like tenuously housed and about to get evicted, that's that's really, really difficult and traumatic to experience. And I would never want to encourage someone to put themselves in the position of experiencing poverty if that's avoidable. But second, if you don't have a good microphone and a good webcam, like there are little things that really do require being resourced, even the time that it takes, to have 5, 6, 7 days off in a row. That's a luxury that a lot of people don't have. And so it is really important to be as well in a just really general way as well as possible. And I think part of that is feeling a sense of security or safety. Doesn't have to be like ultra wealthy other people's definition, but to at the very least be in a position where you're not crying and stressing like, if I don't get a session tomorrow, I don't have food, I don't have a home. That doesn't facilitate that spiritual growth, I don't think.
No, not at all. It is a beautiful thing to have the call to this craft, and that I think makes us study, makes us get involved there. And then if this is the thing, right, if this is the thing, you want to make it bigger, you want to do this more professionally, you want to really ground it in, then we step out to our community and say, how do I do this? So you can find out the just real life, no frou-frou boxes to put around it, or the guidelines to follow. So we're going to talk about that today. You want to study, even if you want to just study for yourself, but if you want to study and you want to move things along professionally, if you're just an astrology enthusiast, there is space for you at this table as well. And we're going to give you some resources that hopefully help you along to be able to do that. So gosh, where to start? Where do we start with this? So we know how you got in, but maybe let's just start with education. I mean, I know, like I'm looking over here at my bookshelf. We see yours, the Professional Astrologer.
So this book was put out by the Organization for Professional Astrology, OPPA. This book came to me pretty early in my I'm going to be a professional trajectory. I highly recommend this book. This is the only one I know of that contains this information. And OPPA as an organization, they put on 2 different types of retreats. Some are just like learn more about astrology, part of their certification process, which we can talk more about. But one of them is called iAstrologer. And those workshops are like writing for astrologers, website development for astrologers, the soft skills that are really critical to make a practice, whatever that looks like, into a successful business. And one of the things that I most appreciated about this book is that in the back there's surveys that break down how astrologers became professionals, what percentage are completely self-employed, how many are actually only doing astrology, but because they have a spouse that has a baller job and they don't need to work. So looking at those numbers, knowing that for most astrologers, it takes 5 years or more to make the transition into professional practice. Not saying that it has to, but the expectation that I'm going to start my website and I'm going to do a YouTube video and then bam, I'm a full-time, that's not what happens. So for me, this was literally my starting place, was reading this book and sitting down and thinking, okay, let's do the business plan. What's the math? How many sessions would I have to do at what price to be able to not work again? Is that sustainable for me? Whatever number of sessions it is, how much time in marketing and other types of work will I have to put in to get that result? And that's what made me realize, okay, I can't just go from being a bartender and working at a weed shop and like these minimum wage retail customer service types of jobs. Um, while that gives me more time, 4-day work week, great. That doesn't give me the resources that I need to be able to engage the education and actually just get the tools and the technology necessary to do the types of things in my practice I want to as well as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's like from my side, I came in having my advanced education under my belt, all of that good kind of stuff. My business was, you know, I built it from scratch because I really had no idea what I was doing. And I had absolutely no idea about that book. I didn't find that book until, I don't know, about a year ago. And so it was nice to see, though, to go back in there and realign my practice and say, where does this, where am I on track with this? Does my business plan reflect the changes that have been made? Have I considered the legal situations in my local area?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, what are the legalities I need to pay attention to there? All of these different things that come out of that book that if you never even want to practice professionally, but you're looking for some, how do they do this information? Because people love stuff like that. That
Mm-hmm.
book is like gold.
Yeah.
It is just gold to get you going, get you thinking about how you're going to do this thing. What branch of astrology are you really called to? Those kinds of
Yeah.
things are, and how to make those connections. It's absolutely beautiful. And that resource comes from OPA, OPPA. So
Mm-hmm.
we will make sure that all of the links are in the description box down below for you as well, so you can check them out. And again, if this is a hobby and you love it, you don't want to do it professionally, OPPA is still, all of the associations are still absolutely beautiful places for you to grow your astrology knowledge.
Absolutely. I mean, even if OPA offers a monthly webinar that's free to members, membership is $60.
For
If
the
you are
year,
for
for
the
the
year, so
year.
that's $5 a month to get an hour and a half long presentation. You couldn't buy that webinar that cheaply.
Yeah.
So if you're an enthusiast and you just want to um, get webinars, most of which are going to be geared towards not like the most advanced astrologers. They may not break down this is what that symbol is and this Leo, the sign of the sun, but the information is still presented in English, not in like technical astrology jargon. And so there's a lot of accessible stuff. That was part of my learning process going from, I've been studying astrology close to 20 years. I'm finally going to go from, I think I gave my first reading to a friend at 18 and I was 30 when I finally started my practice. I had like in between, I almost started a website and almost started my practice when I was younger. So, if you're in that in between stage, maybe I want to, my self guided enthusiasm isn't as deep as I want to go. OPA is a great organization to check out and get more information from. They offer a certification that is currently the only qualitative certification. So they're not going, can you do the math? Tell me what the interpretation is. They're saying, okay, you need to do 3 rounds of peer process and do readings and exchange and talk about your practice with other people. You need to be versed. They've added a history component. You need there. It's so much more about I don't want to say soft necessarily, but the consultation skills that are separate from, do you understand what you're looking at? Can you synthesize the information?
Yeah, absolutely. And really one of the big things I want to put out there in terms of all of the associations in astrology right now in the United States, we are an ungoverned, so an unregulated industry. So who better than to take things to the highest ethical standards, make sure we have strong practitioners out there, than a body of our own to sit down with and to get together with. And there's something magical that happens to a practitioner when you come under the eyes of your fellows, where it's like, well, let's strengthen here. And I know that I found out the things that I didn't know by coming into association, as well as just feeling supported and continuing to grow my astrological information. But there's a change that I think happens when we come into association like that. And I also love that I'm an OPPA member as well, but I love that OPPA also brought Gemini Brett to the table to get
Yes.
outside and study the sky, because
Yes.
so many of us, and it's okay, so many of us have come from the screen and seeing the program on the software or the website or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but it's like, well, was Mars high in the sky? Where was he at? Right. And Gemini Brett gets you out there and says, let's stand under this big old sky and see how your astrology is happening around you. It is so beautiful to bring in the astronomy portion. So if you're
Absolutely.
thinking, because I know that I came to the table this last year being like, man, I'm pretty good here in my translation and my interpretation, but I didn't know the sky. And I was afraid to come out of hiding because I was like, oh my God, I don't know the sky. And then I found out there's a whole bunch of us that are practicing professionals that don't know the sky the way that we know the chart. And these people are our teachers waiting in
Yeah,
these associations to teach us what we need to know next to be great. It's beautiful.
absolutely. Gemini Brett is one of the first people that I met actually once I started like, what? There's astrology conferences? What do you mean there's astrology associations? I'm in it. I was up in Washington State at the time. So Washington State Association of Astrologers was my like monthly stomping grounds, and one of the first places where I met other people who weren't like friends who said, oh yeah, I know that there's such thing as a moon sign. What is my moon sign?
Right.
Got to meet other people like, speaking my language. But it was after one of those sessions that, I saw Brett, and at that time I was like, oh my God, famous astrologer. I can't, and he's just like, hey, oh, you see these stars? You know what's going on there? Do you know that thing, this thing?
Yeah.
You can follow. So I got to chatting with him, and every time I'd see him, I'd be like, okay, I did the thing you told me. What's my next step? And I remember him saying, pick a direction, look that direction, get to know the stars, get to know the ecliptic. If you've got a window facing that way, get a dry erase marker, circle a star, watch it over the course of a month, watch it over the course of the year, and then you start to get a sense of the ecliptic and like the living sky is what he talks about. I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that he moved this way too, and we actually live just a few miles away from each other now. But yeah, that's one of the things that happens. I had never thought about, ironically, never thought about what I was looking at as being part of how astrology came to be. And so, just meeting Brett opened up a whole different type of astrology that I never thought of, got me thinking about other organizations and teaching other schools that existed. But that all those little pieces kind of come together, like I studied with the School of Traditional Astrology and did their horary practitioner program last year. And a lot of what you'll look at with horary, which is the astrology of answering questions like, I lost my keys, where are they? Or what's going to happen if this case goes to court? And also electional astrology, the when is the best time to start stuff. Both of those require an understanding of speed, visibility, and the motion of the planet. So if you're looking to figure out, is this a good thing? Is this a good time to start? If there isn't an understanding of, oh, when Mars is retrograde, it's in this part of the sky. It's moving very slowly or very, very quickly. Understanding those bits of information starts to make astrology so much more complex in a really good way.
Yeah, because it brings it home. And we were just having the conversation before about how we finally got to have like a regular old Cancer moon that wasn't all jostled and shaken up. And so we got to come home. And so
Yeah.
if you're sitting out there and astrology, on its own is a pretty solitary practice. So coming into association for us, like it's just, that's the tribe, and it opens up and we get to come home, and you come home to your knowledge and bring the sky into your body, bring the sky into your practice and right out of your mouth. It's absolutely, everything changed for me when I came into association. So associations, let's talk about those. So we talked about
Yeah.
OPPA. OPPA's out there. You can check that out. Maurice Fernandez has been here. Arlen's been here. So you've had a chance to be in front of some of these people, and we'll make sure you have the link to the website. But there is also ISAR, which is
Yeah.
another really, really big one, ISAR. So you'll see that. And they have a conference this year, of course, 2020. Their conference is going virtual like everybody else did. But ISAR also offers certification as well. And now theirs is, and I think, Bear's getting a book. I'm getting excited.
I can reach it.
Pulling it out.
This bad boy.
This is gorgeous because in this one, you're going to do the math.
Yeah, this one's like a bunch of different research methodologies and ways to approach projects. So if you are looking at becoming a consulting astrologer and you want to do your own research, what do I think this planet means? This book is really excellent. ISAR is the International Society for Astrological Research. So if you're in more of the research mode of things, especially if you're looking at things like mundane astrology, the astrology of world events and nations, then understanding how to put together that type of research, there's that book Cosmos and Psyche, written by Richard Tarnas,
Oh,
undercover astrology book. I got that book and had him sign it. No idea that it was astrology. I was like, yeah, cosmology, let's read. And that, I mean, that book took him 30 years to write. He wrote 2 other books in the process of putting that together. And that's an example of like doing that research correctly. It takes a lot of time and a lot of technical expertise. And ISAR is an organization that is really geared towards helping new and established astrologers get access to the research methodologies and information. I believe they also have a few research stipends if you really get deep into it.
yeah. And so when we're talking about this and you're looking at the difference, right? So if you are not hot on the math, you don't want to research, right? You can still join ISAR. There's plenty of great benefit in joining with them. There's so many great webinars. Plus, you get to be in association with other astrologers. You don't have to certify under that, but that's going to be a specific kind of certification. Whereas with OPPA, let's say that you're an astrologer, you've been practicing for 20 years, 5 years, whatever, and you want to keep reading. What OPPA is going to do is you're not going to hit as much of that math, which don't let the math portion scare you. That's not be scary. But what OPPA is going to do is say, cool, show up as you are and allow us to help you become better at what you're doing. We want you to have strong ethical practice so that this industry, this field can be legitimate. So you have these 2 kind of gorgeous options right there in terms of some certification. So whoever and wherever you're at, bring yourself and come study. It's brilliant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we got those certifying bodies, but there are also organizations that don't offer certification or specific to networking and community building and just having a place where you can get to know more folks.
AFAN.
Yes. Yes. And I wanted to say, you were talking about the understanding the legal situation in your local area, and AFAN that's the org they're the only one I think that's doing that legal advocacy, but they're actually, if you live in a state, if you live in California, I can say for sure, and especially if you're in the Bay Area, the reason you can have a business that's called something astrology is because of AFAN.
Right. Oh man, when you get into the history of what has gone down and how they made this work and they have fought for astrology, it's absolutely brilliant. So it's the Association for Astrological Networking is what their title is. And I absolutely dig this organization. And I think that they're fairly cheap. They're like 20 bucks a year.
Yeah.
Right. Something like that.
So 20, maybe 30, but yeah, it's one of the not cheapest. It's not the greatest word to use. It is one of the most accessible organizations, and they offer mentoring. They offer scholarships to conferences. They offer a study stipend. I was able to study with Chris Brennan because I got the 2019 study stipend. And all of that legal advocacy work. I'm actually in a county that was one of their first legal cases. So had there been no ISAR, it would be illegal fortune telling for me to have this practice here. But because of ISAR, I just walked up into the courthouse like, hey, I'm an astrologer. That's a consultation. And they said, cool, it's a consultant license. You pay the same as anyone else. Because there are areas, I mean, in New York, I know, if you have ever gone to the website of a New York astrologer, somewhere you'll see this is entertainment only, because otherwise they fall under the fortune telling laws. Chicago is a place where it's still not explicitly legal, but it's slightly less illegal than it used to be to practice astrology. So there's still places in the US that's just, old school witchcraft laws and anti-fortune telling laws still apply in some places. So if you're in one of those areas and you want to practice, hit up AFAN. They will literally help you start a suit in your local jurisdiction so that you can make your practice legal.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible how that happens. And the thing that drew me to AFAN is the mentorship. And it goes both ways. I absolutely am so in love with this piece, you guys, because you can show up and say, I've been studying for a long time. These skills, I've got them in the bag. I want to help somebody else. And you show up and you get to put your hand out in this community and you can say, okay, I got my practice kind of going, but I'm not sure about this arena. I want a mentor who can teach me how to do Patreon. I want a mentor who can show me how to YouTube. Who would I go to if I need to study this direction? And it's brilliant because it's not, you don't get a teacher, you get a mentor. So they're just there to provide the guidance. So it's another thing too that I feel like, let's say that you are an attorney and you do astrology, you're a medical doctor and you do astrology, and you have skills that you can offer out and mentor someone. Do it. go put your hand out or ask for help. That's the thing that drew me in like the most. I was like, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been a member of AFAN for a couple of years now, and just found out that so many of my initial connections and folks that I was just like, you're awesome, I'm so happy I get to know you. Like, what? You're all on the steering committee?
I know.
Okay. Yeah, it's such a great group of people. Really can't speak highly enough of AFAN. And once you're interacting with any of these organizations, I mean, OPPA for sure, ISAR, AFAN, we'll talk about other ones as well. Once you engage those communities, it can feel like, you know, trying to walk into a convention or conference in some field you've never been in, like, oh, I'm all alone and nobody wants me here or cares that I'm here. Astrology is
No,
not like that.
it is not like that.
Especially if you're young, there is an elder to your relative age that will show up like, oh my God, I have been waiting for someone like you to show up so that we can pass this on.
Yeah, it is that's been my experience too. It is the community that I feel like we're so welcoming to our fellows, but also, like you said, that next generation, right? There is just this very clear, I feel like, understanding that they're not going to be here forever. We're not going to be here forever. It is my job to kind of impart this to you and help you do this so that it can continue to go. That's a beautiful thing in an industry that is not highly competitive. Not to say that it's not, where there's human beings in these associations, but to have it that welcoming, no matter how you're coming in, self-study, went through a school, whatever your situation is. And if you are young, the Association of Young Astrologers, AYA, that's your spot, right? That is a beautiful spot. And it's funny because just energetically, AYA has that young association kind of feel to me, where they're like, yeah, cool, let's talk about that. You're going to do that? You want to do YouTube Live? You want to do a Facebook Live? You want to do this? Like, I just love that vibe that they carry.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm also a member of IA. Some of the like, how do I say it? Folks like Chris Brennan, Austin Kopic, who their names are getting pretty big these days, have both been presidents of that organization. It's an organization that isn't just for young people. If you're like 98 and love astrology and want to connect with folks, IA is for you too.
Yeah.
Their mission is to facilitate that intergenerational connection. So definitely huge. They also, they do things like when there's not COVID and conferences are an in-person thing, they set up room shares and like facilitate that process. So there's a lot of stuff they're doing to help make astrology more accessible for young people or folks who don't have loads of money sitting around.
Yeah. And it's neat because I think right now, even if you are a part of some associations and you're looking for other ones, there's also, I believe with AYA, there are board positions open right now.
Yeah, I think there's at least 2.
Yeah, I think they're still doing their calls. So if you want to help, drive that body a little bit and drive that organization, that association, that's a beautiful opportunity for you there. Absolutely. As well.
Yeah. And IA, if you are a member of IA, you get a discount on your OPPA membership. I'm not sure if there are other organizations. Washington State Association of Astrologers, I believe, offers a discount. No, there's something that they do for IA members with NORWAC. It would be, but there's like inter-organizational stuff going on. The largest astrology conference, the United Astrology Conference, UAC, that one is co-hosted by ISAR, NCGR, AFAN, and I think one other organization.
Isn't AFAN's not a part of that one?
AFAN and maybe not AFA. I feel like it's 4, but either way, that is the charter for that conference requires that all of the collaborating organizations work together to host it. So that's a space where there's a lot of not just tons of workshops. I think the 2018 UAC in Chicago had like 1,800 attendees.
It's huge.
Yeah, just tons of workshops and conferences, and also several certifying organizations host tests and various components of that certification process at those conferences. So once you start digging in, you realize that there's just this crazy web of astrologers who are working to make it as accessible and open and rigorous and ethical as possible.
Yeah. And then there's NCGR.
Yep.
So this is another research body that's really strong in that. And it's the National Council for Geocosmic Research.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right. I always get the G. I'm like,
Yep.
Research. So NCGR has different chapters as well. So you can find one I believe in many of the local areas, and Colin Bedell and I were talking about this a little bit because he's, I think, vice president of his chapter in his area. So there are things that are happening in your areas as well that you can actually show up to them instead of trying to be a part of like one big conference if that's not available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just became the community outreach or the outreach chair for NCGR San Francisco.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of stuff going on. They also have a great like curriculum workbook. Can I read that backwards? Education, curriculum, and study guide for certification testing. And they have 4 different levels of certification from like level 1, I know basic astrology, I can interpret for you, all the way up to level 4, which is like, I could teach an astrology class inside and out and write a book that I researched myself. And this book really covers the basics of what you need to know, that you know or don't know to be able to do it, right? Sometimes the hardest part is, a couple of years ago, I heard someone talk about, it was Chris Brennan, it was like zodiacal releasing. And I was like, I've been studying astrology for way over a decade. I've never heard of that. That's nonsense.
Yes.
It's not nonsense. It's totally real. And if you don't have a sense of everything that's out there, all the disciplines, you might think that's totally bogus, or that person doesn't know what they're talking about, when in fact they're sharing, like in the case of zodiacal releasing, a technique that was lost for thousands of years, and only recently in like the last 20-ish years, maybe 30, did that text get found and then translated into a language where we American astrologers have the opportunity to study that technique.
Yeah. And if you don't know, like if you're just self-studying, you just don't know that you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay, but that's what opens the practice up just a little bit more. So there's lots of different bodies that are available. And there are also, outside of just the association of bodies, I know all over the world, there are just meetups that happen. Chris Brennan has one here in Colorado. They meet up in Denver at the Mercury Cafe. So in your local areas, you can look up your meetups as well, or just look up Astrology Meetups Association, something like that. And you don't have to be a professional. You can just show up, dig in, enjoy, learn a little something, have a snack. I'm a fan of a snack. So you can do snacks and astrology. Thus, up here, right?
WASA, the Washington State Association of Astrologers, has been around for quite a long time. They, in my experience, I would say at least half, if not 2/3 of the audience are folks who are enthusiasts or students, and maybe they read for friends, but that's not how they make money or what they're doing in a professional context. But, aside from that, like Rick Levine, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to remember the name of the coffee house? I want to say it's like Soul Food Coffee House, but I think that's wrong. A coffee house in Redmond, Washington, that he's been hosting, a once a month Let's Talk About Astrology moment. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, Stormie, that getting together with folks and breaking bread or whatever kind of food you eat or don't eat, that moment of like connection and being fed, not just like with nutrition in your face, but also being fed with community and shared language, I think, is like the easiest way to say it. It's one thing to really know astrology and to grok that book and to study a lot, but there is nothing like having a two-way conversation with somebody who's like, yeah, sun, Kazemi, I know what that means. Let's flesh it out.
Right. And there's something about, I think, as we're coming up or we're coming out, wherever you're at in your practice, where it's like, a message I have is find your tribe, because what we don't want to do to the people in our lives is take them hostage, right? Like I'm in love with astrology, and maybe your spouse or your parents don't quite get it. And it's their fear and their misunderstanding showing up, and you'll step back. Right? I know that. I work with a lot of people who have stepped back because they've met someone else's fear, which met their fear, and then we don't move forward. So maybe don't take hostages. Let those nice people just be over here. And you have your tribe you get to talk to and speak that delicious language. You come back soul fed, and you can be of service to these relationships with no hostages, right? Yes. Like it's a beautiful thing. So 0 hostages. That is the message of the night.
Yeah.
And have snacks and do astrology.
100%. I was just thinking, as we were reflecting on all these organizations and thinking about astrology, the 11th house is the house of the good diamond. Think like God, fairy godmother, guardian angel in modern day parlance, right? So the 11th house is also the house where we see community organizations and affiliation based on like chosen affiliation. So it seems so appropriate that as we're we're talking about astrology, and this is our first time dialoguing in this context, and in like professional collaboration, and we're talking about astrology's fairy godmother, which is astrology organizations.
Yeah, truly is. And something I think is interesting is that right now, because in the United States we're ungoverned, we're unregulated, really, we can kind of do our own deal. Saturn moves into the energy of Aquarius, right? This is the thing. Saturn gets serious where it goes. So before long, we could find that from our own tribe, we've created something that does create the regulation or create the high standard for the practice that is out there. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but I think it also puts all of us in that space to question, am I on track with providing a really quality experience in the astrological industry,
Absolutely.
Because the other thing that I think comes up the most for us is, do I have to be certified? Do I have to certify? And the answer is absolutely not. I know brilliant astrologers who've been doing it for years. They are not certified, and I would buy everything they're selling, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you do not have to. But I do think that as we consider, especially if we want to take this into a more professional realm, are you future proofed, right? Some future proofing here to the business.
Yeah.
Should we call for certification? You've already done the work. You've met your fellows. You've demonstrated that you can do a practice that does no harm, right? So I think that's something to consider as we move through this Saturn and Aquarius time. And even Saturn, when it moves through Pisces, I think we might firm up on some things, and that's only for the good.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my I shouldn't say pet projects, one of the things I'm working on with several colleagues right now is called MICA, the Metaphysical Intersectional Collective of Astrologers. And we've been in dialogue about creating this organization for over a year now. But just since NORWAC this year, both with my lecture and Diana Rose Harper, who's one of my colleagues, incredible astrologer, along with Shakira Taborn, who is now running the Fresh Voices in Astrology Summit. Super, super proud and happy for her. And then a colleague, Erin Tack Shipley, who's an incredible white accomplice. If you are a white person wanting to get anti-racist with your practice, Erin is the person I most highly recommend. But the four of us have been talking about, there's, aside from the consultation skills, which OPPA is doing, or both the AFA, the American Federation of Astrologers, which is, I think, the oldest astro org in the country, and then ISAR, the International Society for Astrological Research, they have codes of ethics that their astrologers have to abide by. But we've been talking about the need for, let's call it cultural sensitivity education. That's not the best way to describe it, but, as there are more and more folks from different backgrounds, in the millennial generation in the US, at least, is the most diverse generation since before World War II, at least. The amount of immigration and migration that's happening, the amount of folks from different backgrounds who are not forced to assimilate in the same way, means that there is an increased need for that sort of cultural competency. And, if we think about gender, there's an increased need for people to be able to talk about astrology outside the context of there are two genders and this is what they are. So that's something we've really been looking at is how to bring about that rigor in many different ways that helps facilitate that practice that does no harm.
Yeah, it's a brilliant time. I think it's always been a brilliant time to be alive with astrology, but here we are, just today, and it's a brilliant time to watch what's happening here and watch what's open. So we have a question really quick from the chat.
Yeah.
So the question is, for which organizations or associations do we recommend for someone who's new or someone who is advanced? And I think that's a good question because, you and I are part of all of them because we're nosy. But if you have to choose, what would you say?
Ooh, I would say if you're new and your goal is not professional full-time, that's the only thing I care about, I would start with AYA. Especially if you're a young person. AYA and AFAN. Ooh, how do I choose? AYA and AFAN.
I know, right?
I think AFAN has so much structure around facilitating people growing into their practice, growing into their astrological study. Gotta go with that. But Aya is really active. Like they've got a Discord channel. They're active on Twitter. So if you're a young person in social media, once you start to know just a few of those people, or you join that board, those folks are actively working to introduce you to other people in the community. And I think that's so hard to just meet new people. Most folks, that's not like their best skill.
Sure.
But especially on the internet, if you don't know what you don't know, you definitely don't know who you don't know and how to get a hold of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that too, because I think it's funny you started with Aya, because I was like AFAN. So we still, either way, I think we both go both ways. So, definitely if you're starting out, neither one of those bodies is going to steer you wrong. They are both absolutely affordable and accessible. And because there is so much inner conversation between the associations, truly, like you're going to land where you need to. And I think that I would recommend those ones, especially if you're new as well, because there is the opportunity for the mentorship. And it just seems like conversation's a little bit easier there with ISAR. It's good and it's fine, and the networking is still there, but I always have this sense there's a little bit more structure there. It's a little bit more established. It just has a different vibe to me. So,
Yeah.
but I don't honestly think any of them that you pick, you're gonna, just be left in the dust. But I would do AFAN or Aya too.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't met an organization that I don't like. And I think it really just depends on what your goal is. If you're more on the advanced side and you're doing crazy amounts of research, I would highly recommend the American Federation of Astrologers, AFA. It's the oldest org around, and it's got more elders with more years under their belt than any of the other orgs, to my knowledge. But they've also got a crazy publishing house.
Yeah.
So if you are just hungry for the books, that membership gets you a discount in that bookstore. And there are books that you won't find in other places. There's one I have called American Histology that's just like 1,000 charts of American history breaking down their time and date, published by AFA. And if you type in American history astrology, I don't know if you'll find this in the Google, but if you're up in the AFA bookstore, there's a lot of great resources that just can't be talked highly enough about.
Yeah, I know that's just the one thing I think does make it hard, because all of the associations really are good and they just offer these little gems. And it's this place that I feel like no matter what home is for you in astrology, there's definitely a place and there's an association and an organization that is going to be able to help get you there or facilitate what it is that you're trying to do. So I think that's exciting personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and so certification, are you doing it? You're not doing it? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm pursuing it slowly but surely. I am working on the chart math part that is essential for NCGR and ISAR and AFA. If you can't look at a table, like there's a table of houses and a couple different types, but if you can't take latitude, longitude, and time and date and convert that into space and time and then back to space, then the ECGR, ISAR, NCGR, and AFA, those certifications are not accessible. OPPA, I think, is really the only one I know of that, in terms of a like professional astrology certification, there's definitely narrower certifications. I finished my certification through Chris Brennan for his Hellenistic program and electional program, and then I did STA's horary practitioner. They do have a second level horary master, so I don't want to make it sound like I've got everything horary under my belt. I'm halfway there or more maybe, but there are definitely organizations that have those smaller pieces. I think my goal is NCGR level 4. I don't know if I want to rectify it. I don't know what a research project would look like, but I think that's what I'm gunning for. At one point, I was like, I'm getting AFA, ISAR, NCGR, OPPA, all of them. OPPA definitely takes more time because of those in-person relational components. You really have to, I think the fastest you could do it if there were no COVID is about 2 years.
2 years, that's it.
And
that's the fastest.
Yeah, and to teach for them, you need to have been an OPPA member for at least 7 years. So they're on a whole, it's not just about technical expertise, it's about community and showing up with good relationship in your practice.
Yeah, and I think I this just came to me though too, thinking about OPPA. Sorry to jump subjects for a second,
Yeah.
but in OPPA, one of the things that they were really big on too is making sure that in your life you have a grounding practice for yourself.
Yeah.
in order to be that active kind of channel for the work. So that is something that I just want to throw that out there as well. You know, as you're thinking and you're considering, do I want to associate? Do I want to line up? That's one of the things that is part of that practice as well. So,
Yeah. One of
yeah.
my mentors, Kay Taylor, is now the president of OPPA.
Yes.
And she did a year-long mentorship program. And I remember one of the things I was talking to her about, I'd gotten a little distracted with rock climbing. I have a fear of heights. And I was like, I'm conquering this fear of heights and I'm doing it in the gym. And here we go. And I remember talking to her being like, oh, I feel like I've kind of missed a lot of benchmarks and milestones because I've been doing this. And she was like, you're working on addressing your fear and working through fear. 98% of every client you ever see will be working through a fear of change, a fear of not changing. Working through your fear in the gym is literally the most important thing you could do for your practice right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's where OPPA is coming from. Definitely with Brett and the astronomy piece, it's, do you have a relationship with the sky? Do you have a relationship with yourself, with a grounding practice, with a spiritual practice, such that you can step in an hour or an hour and a half, meet somebody where they're at and facilitate their spiritual growth?
Yeah.
That's such a huge thing.
That's a huge, beautiful thing. And Kay Taylor will actually be here in just a couple weeks. She's coming on next. So we'll get to enjoy her. Actually, we're going to be meeting at a day where the nodes are lit up. So we're going to talk about some stuff. I'm pretty excited for here. So we'll keep you guys posted on when Kay is coming in as well. But this is like a lot. There's a lot that's out there. There's a lot that's available. Community is available in astrology, and you don't have to be a professional astrologer. I cannot stress that enough. If you're new, you're curious, you're wondering, I'm going to tell you what, 20, 30, 60 bucks, it'll be the best you spend in the year if astrology is where you want to be.
Yeah.
And to also know, you know what I mean? Some of the things I found out through there are, which books do I need? Which ones should I read? There's so much. Which ones are dry? Because there's some dry astrology books, let's be real, you know? Like what's going to really facilitate you to do good things?
Yeah.
So, man, anything else you would tell people about the educational portion, certification, associations, any of that kind of stuff?
There's no astrology being a science of timing, or an art of timing, whatever you want to call it. There's no amount of time you have to do it in. I think the most important things that I've learned are that there are astrologers who've been offering consultations professionally for decades and they still keep a day job. There are astrologers who it's their passion. You hear them talk about something and you're like, oh my God, do you offer sessions? And they say, no, that's not their thing. There is no right way to be an astrologer, and there's no right time to get certified, to learn more. I think it's so important that it be a relationship that we have. Ari Felix and I yesterday at AMC, the Allied Media Conference, we're talking about the planets as movement ancestors. And one of the things we really came to is that, it's not just about this planet's here and therefore those are our star relatives, especially if you're the kind of person who sees, the crystals and the stones and the trees and all the other animals as your relations, the stars are as well. And it's in deeper relationship, the right answers come. It's not really, in the way that there are right answers. There aren't the right answers. There's what brings you into alignment. So do what lights you up. If you hate math and you really want to get certified in one of the kind of more mathematical organizations, there are people out there who will definitely help you. If you, I think if you follow the call, we were talking about at the beginning, if you follow that call, the thing that you need will show up. And I think astrology is an art or a practice that shows us that that's the case. When we're on our path, the things that we need arrive when we need them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I'll say is this, guys, and we'll close, let you go. No hostages. That's the theme.
Yeah.
If you do decide that you want to study and you really, you want to associate, you want to take this thing to a different place, be prepared to change, right? Like if you don't want to change, just do what you're doing. But if you're prepared for the magical journey that comes with the human change, show up in association. You will be rocketed into some of the most incredible soulmates that are out there for you to study and to get to know, and it will change you. It will change the way you interact with your money. It will change what you believe about sex, and you're showing up to just figure out planets, and it doesn't seem interrelated, but you will change at such a beautiful level once you step into that association. So if you're ready for it, be ready for it, because you have no idea. I mean, I look back a year, 2 years, 5 years ago, and I'm like, man, if I hadn't met these people, I would have never known.
Yeah. Yeah. NORWAC and a combination of Twitter just absolutely changed my life. I had met Aaron through Kay Taylor's mentoring group. So we knew each other a bit, but meeting Kira and Diana has just completely changed my own personal life and my professional life. I think the thing that really that stuck out to me and came to my mind as you were talking about this change to be prepared for is when you get really, really deep into it, it's questions like, is the universe already spelled out? Is everything predetermined? Or do we have free will? Like, there are such deep fundamental questions that aren't for anybody else to answer, but for you to ask yourself, that are like enmeshed in this when you go real deep into it. I think that level of depth needs a guide. Astrologers are good guides.
They're good guides. Gemini Brett always says astrology is a way in, not a way out. And I absolutely believe that. So
I'm going to ask Brett why he never told me that. That's great.
I know, you're like, why are you sharing these pearls with everybody?
Wow.
That man, if you get a chance to study with Gemini Brett, my God, just get your fingers all pruny in there, because that is some good stuff over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And give yourself lots of time. I think it took me a year to work through that lesson he gave me about the ecliptic and understanding how it moves. Yes. I think if you want to deepen your relationship with astrology and a teacher isn't for you, you're like, I work alone, no group work ever. Just get out there and start looking at the zodiacal constellations, get a feel for the ecliptic. One of the things that he did in the OPPA astrologer retreat was he talked about, face due south and put your hands up like this. That's the midheaven. Now drop your hands a bit. There's your ninth house. There's your 11th house. Here's your ninth house. Boom. There's the 8th house. Go down here. There's your horizon. It's so physical. It's right there, but you just gotta take the time to speak with the star relatives and ask them to show you.
Yeah. And I just can't echo this more. We're going to leave. I swear, you guys, but give yourself time. Give yourself time. I mean, even in the basics, in most of the astrology programs like Astro University, even with Stephen Forrest, and you can go on and on and on to all of the teachers, the basics are a year. The basics are a year. So give yourself time to peel and unfold and, memorize what you need to, but it is okay to show up 5 years into your practice and not have a solid grasp on progressions yet. That's fine. That's fine. Just show up as you are. You're definitely wanted here. So, Bear, where can we find you? Where can the peoples find you?
You can find me at my website, Psyche and Soul Astrology, PSYCHE, Psyche and Soul, SOUL, astrology.com. You can find me a bit through NCGR San Francisco now that I'm sitting on their board. I am in like ISAR, NCGR, OPPA, AFAN, IA. So you can find me around those parts. I'll be speaking at the Fresh Voices in Astrology Summit, August 15th and 16th. It's totally free to register. So Fresh Voices in Astrology, hit that registration link. If you pay for the all access pass, then you'll get unlimited access to all the videos and you can watch at your own pace. I'm on Twitter. My handle is astralids, ASTRAL_IDS, like astral plane and lids like hats. Eventually I'll get back to the astrology hats thing. I'm most active on Twitter. The website's a great way. You're welcome to DM me. Instagram, it's the same handle, but with a dot instead of an underscore. And I look forward to hearing from any and all of you. I'm definitely about taking more of a mentorship and leadership role in the community and ushering more folks in.
Yeah, well, this is a beautiful way to start that. So you guys, as always, when I bring people, I don't ever know if this is your teacher or it's not your teacher, if this is a guide for you. So Bear's your guide if you feel the call. If you're watching on the playback, if you're listening on the playlist like 6 months from now and Bear's your person, we'll make sure all the contact information is available to you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for showing up tonight. Hopefully we gave you something that was worth your time. All right, you guys, we will see you next week on Monday. Chris Brennan will be here. We will be teaching you profection. So if you haven't seen that ancient timing technique, it is beautiful and it will explain like all of 2000 to you. I assure you, you're going to be like, Yes, I was going through my Pluto. That is dang right. So we will see you guys in the eat and greets on Monday. Bear, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Stormie. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.